I would like to invite the Jaskanwar to join our conversation and also introduce herself and tell us a few words about your background.
Hi, thank you for having me here. So I've been a tech entrepreneur within the blockchain and AI fields. I'm a computer science engineer by profession. Um, Built and sold multiple companies, lived across the UK, Portugal, Canada, now also Dubai and India. So I have a broad strokes understanding of the ecosystem across those countries. And yeah, I'm happy to contribute in any way possible. I sit on the boards of multiple public listed companies across the continent. So yeah, cool. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for your introduction. And Professor Vignesh mentioned about the government programs of how do they support entrepreneurs.
Yes.
It would be interesting to discuss about the digital infrastructure. How does it help or how does it shape opportunities for tech startup founders? Maybe you can open up this information for us.
Sure. So if you look at India as a market, I think the esteemed panelists have already explained how it's quite difficult to do business because of bureaucracy. And as those difficulties have been lifted off, people have come and done business and all of that. What tech infrastructure does is it just takes away the bureaucracy element. So instead of going to the bank to do a bank transfer, now you can use unified payments interface to do that. And then you have network effects from people doing it within themselves, and then supplementary secondary apps that get built on top. That's number one. Number two, the government is also doing multiple other initiatives such as unified credit interface, which would allow an SME owner to access credit, because in India, access to credit has been a challenge historically. It's been, I would say, more so solved within the country for the upper middle class. If you think about India, it's also very important to not just think about a single country. There is the equivalent of, I would say, the top echelon of the society, which behaves rather like Upper Mexico, and then you have a society which behaves similar to Sub-Saharan Africa, and also something like the UK as well, embedded within India as well. So you have like three kind of societies, three kind of markets that you go after. You just can't think of it as a single market. It has the upper middle class, rural India, and you have like the upper echelon of the society. And there are like brands which, because each of these market segments are big enough, there are brands which are going after them individually.
Thank you so much for your insights on that. And we already talked a bit about this upcoming the technologies and the fintech. If you talk in general about the AI, blockchain, and maybe some fintech moves in the Indian startup ecosystem, what role these technologies play in emerging the ecosystem?
Sure. So so you asked me three things, right? So there's AI, fintech, and blockchain.
Yes.
In that respect, India has used AI very well. So we've built on top of LLM models which exist out in the market. Like we have things which are built on top of GPT. We have things which are built on top of Perplexity, Claude, so on and so forth. So somebody has built an operational AI which uses ChatGPT to basically make operational stuff easier, right? However, what we've not done is built an LLM in-house. That's where China and the US have done really well. And there's been government funding available for doing that. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs now that are focusing on that. So building an Indian LLM is super important for the country. However, India has a lot of AI engineers which are able to take in existing LLMs and then build on top of it for any sort of startup. So that's AI. In terms of general fintech, it's one of the best environments to work in because of the fact that the government has these systems such as UPI, UCI, and so on and so forth, which are not available outside. And using those API stacks, you can build second order products, lending on top, etc., etc. So from a fintech perspective, there is second order benefits that have already started to drop in. However, from the blockchain side, right, it's kind of a contradiction, because if you think about how blockchain adoption happens in the developed world, it's usually two things, right? So the first thing is that fintech technology is not available easily within the society, so they use blockchain to send money to one another, right? That's one use case. And the other use case is that there's so much inflation in the country itself that they need to use a US dollar stable coin to be able to save money for themselves. Now, both of these problems essentially do not exist in India, which is why the adoption of blockchain on ground for actual use cases is quite lower than other developing countries, right? It's because the major use cases don't exist. But as it becomes really important to have a sovereign money kind of a situation, that's where, as people realize it, as people get more and more wealthy on the scale, that would be a priority for them.
Thank you so much for your answer. And if you talk about these regulatory or ethical considerations which may arise due to these technologies, maybe AI and these new blockchain things. So what global tech entrepreneurs should be aware of when entering this Indian market when it comes to regulatory or ethical considerations?
So a lot of the regulatory, I'll answer it in two, I would say, parts. So from the regulatory perspective and the ethical perspective, in terms of the regs, there's situation has gotten easier, where earlier you had to deal with taxes in each of the states. We have about 29 states, and now you don't have to do that. We have a uniform tax code all across the country. However, there are still a lot of local regulations that one needs to understand. So having knowledge of the bureaucrats which operate in the area is super important. If a company is nascent and is coming from outside India, setting up shop there, it's, in my opinion, it's much better to do it in, I would say, a special economic zone where the government will handhold getting approvals and all of that. So we have many of them in India. This is akin to how China also designated a lot of these economic zones, and then growth happened in those areas itself. So that's from a regulatory perspective. From an ethical consideration, when you deal in doing business with in China versus doing business in India, it is like we haven't given up morality totally in the subcontinent, which basically means we follow patent laws. We are, I would say, part of the global network, part of the global society. So we won't, I would say, it won't be that easy to get an Indian engineering firm to just copy something and then not worry about patent. We have to actively consider all of those things, which is what makes us, I would say, a better alternative to outsource a lot of the work to India rather than China or something like that in the short term. So morality ranks really high up the list because it's part of the spiritual karma dharma of the country itself. So yeah, those are my comments. If you have some counter questions, please throw them my way.